everybody, welcome to Assemble. I'm Matt. Good to have you here. Let's talk about the draft. We've gone through night 1, night 2 of WWE's draft, and the results are they're kind of mixed. So today what we are doing is we are going through the draft as a whole, including all of the additional draft picks on social media, give you a little bit of a run through of some of the hits and some of the misses where WWE made a good decision and got things a little bit right, and we're excited for some of these moves, and then other just misses. Now, it's easy to say, come here. It's easy just to say, well, everyone that's stayed on current brand is a miss, dummy. You could say that. I don't necessarily disagree, but you can't shake up the entire roster and basically just flip-flop everybody, because then you're left with the exact same thing, but one's on a red show, one's on a blue show. So let's go through the draft results as a whole. Let's start off with the first night that was on SmackDown, and let's take a look at those results to see what were some of the hits and misses. Hey, what's that? It's Fume. You want to try it? It smells like mint in here. Yeah, Fume actually has all these different flavors. It's just air, actually. You're sucking mint air? I guess so. Like an odd decision, but okay. Is it filled with all that bad stuff? No, there's no nicotine. There's no toxins, actually. It's just air. It's just tasty. What's wrong with our air? Well, nothing. Just helps me. And also, you might want to try it because it's like, I know you get really fidgety. This could help calm you down a bit. There. Ah, okay. That is kind of satisfying. One thing, sure. I don't like mint. That's okay. There's like maple pepper. They actually got this orange vanilla. They even got like a grapefruit. I do love a good grapefruit. What are you doing? Well, where do you plug it in? There's actually no batteries. Fume served over 150,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code ASSEMBLE and get 10% off a journey pack, and head to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com and use code ASSEMBLE or scan the QR code on screen to save 10% off your order today. That's okay. I'm just gonna take this one. That's mine. Yeah, I'm gonna have this one. Okay, one of the hits, I think, for all of this was going to be Carmelo Hayes. I think Carmelo Hayes getting signed to SmackDown is a good move, and also having that match against Cody Rhodes to spotlight him to get the larger fan base more familiar with Carmelo. He was getting whooped that Trick chance, which was hilarious. And I think Trick even being in and staying in NXT is a good thing to kind of anchor that show as they go over to the CW. The rest of the picks in like round one, all pretty much stayed the same. Some of the other hits I think they did was going to be Nia Jax moving over to SmackDown. I think that Nia did everything that she could when it came to Monday Night Raw, and going through the entire roster there, I think it's a good shakeup, especially if she can get into a strong program with Bayley. That is one thing I would like to see. A miss that I don't think it was a good idea. They kept LA Knight on SmackDown. I don't agree with doing this. Here's why. Because SmackDown is kind of a loaded show. It's only 2 hours. You got a lot of stuff and time dedicated to the Bloodline and everything Bloodline related. And Cody. Cody is also on SmackDown, which we need the 15-minute Cody promo. So I think that having LA Knight staying on SmackDown is a miss because you limit his opportunity. Sure, he's gonna get the mic time, he's gonna have some feuds, he might continue things with Mr. AJ Styles down the road, who knows? Or he's gonna go and fight Logan Paul at SummerSlam for the United States title. That I would love to see. But I think if they had LA Knight on Raw, it would have elevated him a lot more, had the opportunity to, because I could see LA Knight going for the Intercontinental title. I could see LA Knight going after the world title. Him versus Priest or mixing it up with the Judgment Day, that would have been a lot of fun. So LA Knight, I feel like was a miss, should have gone over to Monday Night Raw. Another miss for me was going to be Alpha Academy, not splitting them up during the draft. Now I do understand, after watching Monday Night Raw, I can see where they're going with Chad, like negatively pushing Alpha Academy and the rest of them to like get wins and everything, and he's turned into a jerk. Cool, and you know what? Chad Gable going around with the Intercontinental title, like fighting for it, getting into that division is good. I just think that if they split Chad, or if they did it in a different way where, for example, Alpha Academy gets drafted to Raw and stays on Raw, and that includes Chad, they could have done a fun thing where Chad maybe then goes to management and says, draft me. I need to get away from these losers. I need to get away from the rest of Alpha Academy. I don't want this. And then later in the draft, maybe they end up having the Creed brothers drafted over to SmackDown, thus starting that whole faction and getting that moving. They might be doing that on Monday Night Raw though, with all the pieces. I just feel like we've seen Alpha Academy on Raw for a long time, and it could have helped Chad Gable's character, but remains to be seen how they unfold this thing. I think another win that WWE got was moving all of Damage Control to Monday Night Raw. I think that if they kept them on SmackDown with Bayley around there, it would have muddied the water. It would have had them spinning their wheels eventually. I do think it is a good idea that they are moving over to Monday Night Raw. They're going to have them match the tag team match on Backlash, and they're going to take on Bianca and Jade Cargill in the tag team match for the tag team titles. I kind of assume that Jade and Bianca will take those. And if you guys are watching this after Backlash, maybe they already did. So having no titles, but having the whole group there on Monday Night Raw, I think is a very good fit because you can go after the tag team title still. Io can go after the world title, and you do have Dakota Kai who can mix it up too within the world title scene. But I really feel like WWE is missing things with not having a mid-card women's title. So someone like a Dakota Kai can go after that, or Io. But having like Io fight Becky would be really cool. Io versus Rhea would be awesome. So it's more opportunity, I think, for Damage Control. And then inevitably they're going to split and then they can all fight each other. Now I'm on the fence of this being a miss, but I think it's see, they didn't draft any of the titles. So all of the titles stayed on their respective brands, which I think was an overall miss in general, because it's more interesting when the belts can move across brands and all of that. One of the interesting ones that if they did it, Judgment Day. If they had moved Judgment Day over to SmackDown and separated Priest from the rest of Judgment Day and they're on their own island over there, I think that could have been more intriguing stories. Again, we got to see what's going to play out post-draft, because I could be way wrong and Judgment Day could be the most entertaining thing. And don't get me wrong, they are very entertaining, and I want to see what happens with Priest. With the title, he's kind of pseudo leader, but he's pushing them around a little bit, and then Rhea will eventually come back, and you got the Liv Morgan Dom scenario and Mommy and all this stuff. So there's a lot of elements in there that are really fun. I think it would have been cool to see 3 members of Judgment Day get split off, forced off of Monday Night Raw, and Damian Priest is left on his own because they can still meet up at the PLEs. And then you get Rhea, maybe she comes in as a free agent and she can float over to SmackDown. The other thing we have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, WWE is not one to stick to their own rules. Even under the Triple H era, the Paul Levesque era, it's the greatest era. It doesn't necessarily mean they all stay on the respective brands. They could have moved over, Judgment Day could have moved over to SmackDown, and then just Damian Priest just shows up anyways. We saw this all this past year, so it hasn't made too much of a difference in impact. Another win I'll highlight here, Lyra Valkyria, and you got all of the NXT call-ups. Lyra Valkyria, Ilya Dragunov, Dijak, all moving up. Blair Davenport, Kiana James going over to Raw. A lot of great moves for NXT. Love seeing the reactions from the Performance Center and Shawn Michaels being there. It feels like they're graduating, they're elevating up. It's a big moment for them. Really liked how they handled NXT and those draft picks, and love to see what all of them are actually going to do and how they will be utilized. The thing with Triple H, what I think there's even comments made by him, or it's probably just implied anyways, but when we had Vince and Vince's regime handling NXT 2.0, and even prior to that, Vince would just pluck out a bunch of picks, a bunch of wrestlers, and throw them into this draft with no plans whatsoever. And then some of them just even get released. And it was such a waste. At least with Triple H and Shawn Michaels, they're building the characters in NXT. They're cultivating them there. And when they are coming up to main roster, hopefully, especially this year with Triple H running it, we see them in actual stories that matter, and they are not just going to fill out the roster. Braun Breaker, for example, is just starting to get himself built up. He's got a lot more backstage segments. Yeah, he's still doing some squash matches. He hasn't gotten into a program yet, but they're utilizing him on TV every week. They're making his presence known, and they're gonna build him. And you can't just super shoot everybody and like make Dijak world champion, but you probably should. You can't do all of that, but at least they should have a really good shot of elevating themselves now that they're on main roster. Now, a personal miss for me is Chelsea Green, Piper Niven drafted together to SmackDown. It's like a win and a miss for me. Why? Because I like them both, but big Chelsea Green fan, fellow Canadian Miss Green. And I really like to have seen Chelsea go off on her own. That's why some of the draft felt a little bit dull and boring for a lot of people. And for me, it was kind of like almost predictable for a lot of it. I would have loved to have seen Piper and Chelsea in a backstage thing and then find out that they were drafted separately. Piper stays on Raw and she becomes a single star, and Chelsea goes over to SmackDown and expands over there to see what she can do on her own. Chelsea's great, and you know what? You can also give Chelsea another tag team partner, maybe like a Sonya Deville when she comes back, and redo that thing. Or Carmella, if they bring Carmella back anytime soon, which I thought she would come back at the draft, but she didn't. But I'd like to see Carmella and Chelsea Green, or just get Chelsea Green on her own. I think that would have been more entertaining. Get the reaction, get the split happen. They can go off in their own directions, and then you can elevate the likes of Chelsea Green to win Queen of the Ring or to win Money in the Bank, and mixing it up on her own, because I think she's a really good, strong character. She can still do the backstage stuff with management and Nick Aldis. Would have been a lot of fun. It's still going to be entertaining having them on SmackDown, and will help the tag division, assuming they keep focusing on it. And the final will end on a downer, but we try not to here. But one of the biggest critiques or misses I would give the draft overall is the format. I don't know if the format, and I don't know how you crack this thing to make it better, but I don't think the format really works. Having just legends, superstars just come out to the stage and announce 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people getting drafted. That's the round, and it's just 1, 2, 3. They're done. They go and they move on, and then we get match on TV, and that's it. I kind of think that what they could have done to make the experience more fun is try to do more single drafts, just one every 10-15 minutes on the show on Raw. And if you want to keep it on Raw and SmackDown, doing it that way. But if they did individual draft picks, and that was the focus. So you see that CM Punk is drafted to Monday Night Raw, and then waiting several minutes until the next draft pick by SmackDown, I think then you could get the backstage stuff of people scrambling or Nick Aldis running around trying to figure out who he will pick. Because otherwise it just turns into Raw selects this, SmackDown selects this, Raw is this, and then we see where people haven't switched brands. Like we had a round or two in there on Raw and SmackDown where like nobody changed. It was all the same people. They just got highlighted, and they made it seem like they were drafted. Well, like it was a big deal that they were drafted to the brand they were already on, like Tiffany Stratton, still on SmackDown, Naomi, still on SmackDown. That's fine. You can't move everyone, like I said earlier, but it would have been more fun, I think, if you had really split up the timing of it. And I know that you have a limited amount of time, but you're doing this over 2 days, and you could have even done it through NXT as well to even spotlight more of the draft and had all 3 shows as draft nights, or even did draft as its own show. Make it a big event where all the superstars, and sprinkle in some wrestling matches, and just make it a fun thing on like a Saturday night where they're going to do this WWE network, this Peacock special, whatever, this one exclusive thing for the entire day. And make it a big fun-filled thing. Sprinkle in the picks, sprinkle in some matches, some promos, and you got a really quality product, quality event that people can kind of focus on and doesn't take away from anything else. And you can still have the regular program as you're going, because otherwise you get draft picks that are drafted and they're still in storylines, and it gets messy. So I think if you split up the picks, it would have made more sense from a sports standpoint and sports feel, where people are clamoring to find out where they're going to get drafted. Are they going to move up in the draft? Because then when someone gets drafted to Raw, and then Nick Aldis turns around and says, okay, in response, you know what? They're going to take Damage Control from us. Well, they took 4 superstars from our brand. Okay, well, guess what? We're going to turn around and we're going to keep Tiffany Stratton here because we want to make sure that we're going to highlight her. And that gives motivation for the GMs and the storylines and all of it in kayfabe of why these superstars were kept on their brand and why they maybe snag somebody from the opposite. But the big question is, what were your hits and misses from the draft? Was it yeah, or was it nah? But if you enjoy content like this, guys, do Matt a favor and just hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. It's totally free and supports the channel and helps us grow. Have a great day. See ya.